The first light of dawn broke across the Texas desert, painting the horizon in muted shades of orange and gold. For a few moments, everything was still. Then came the sound, a low hum, distant at first, then growing louder. On the horizon, a convoy of trucks appeared, slicing through the dust near Eagle Pass. They looked ordinary, carrying crates of produce and metal parts. But this was no trade shipment. It was a cartel operation. Hidden beneath the cargo lay millions of dollars worth of fentanyl, methamphetamine, and cocaine, bound for cities across the United States. For months, agents from Homeland Security Investigations, HSI, and Customs Enforcement had been watching, mapping every route, every handoff, every name. This morning wasn't random. It was planned down to the second, a culmination of patience, intelligence, and precision. At 3:45 a.m., the operation was launched. They called it Operation Iron Gate, one of the largest anti-cartel missions in modern U.S. history. Operation Iron Gate, the moment of impact. Over 1,200 federal agents moved under the cover of night, spanning multiple border sectors across Texas. It wasn't just a raid, it was a coordinated strike meant to fracture the very spine of a billion-dollar empire. Teams from ICE, DEA, and Border Patrol worked alongside elite tactical units, armed not only with weapons, but with technology that could see in the dark and predict movements before they happened. Using AI-powered surveillance, thermal drones, and satellite tracking, U.S. intelligence had followed the cartel's every move for weeks. Every decoy signal, every rerouted truck, every digital footprint had been cross-checked through military-grade software developed by the Department of Defense. By the time the convoy neared Del Rio, the trap was already set. Then the desert erupted. Sirens cut through the stillness, rotor blades thundered overhead, and armored vehicles rolled in from every direction. Within minutes, chaos replaced silence. Over 300 cartel operatives, from regional bosses to transport coordinators, were taken into custody. The agents moved with clinical precision, securing the trucks and neutralizing the convoy. When the dust finally settled, the true scale of the seizure stunned even the most seasoned agents. Inside those vehicles were 22 tons of narcotics, including 8.5 tons of fentanyl, enough to wipe out the U.S. population several times over. Alongside the drugs, authorities found $210 million in cash, assault rifles, encrypted servers, and military-grade anti-drone jammers. It was the clearest evidence yet that the cartels had evolved far beyond traditional crime. They were running global networks, rivaling corporations and nation-states in sophistication and reach. A new kind of war officials called it a turning point, a symbolic victory in a war that has consumed generations. But they also knew it was just one battle in a much larger fight. According to the DEA's 2025 report, cartels now control nearly 35% of Mexico's territory, operating with the power of local governments. They collect taxes, run prisons, control utilities, and command private militias estimated at over 40,000 soldiers. Meanwhile, across the border, the fentanyl epidemic in the United States has reached catastrophic levels. The CDC reported more than 75,000 overdose deaths in 2024 alone, a staggering number that reshaped Washington's approach. The scale of the crisis forced the White House to reconsider its tactics. Law enforcement alone wasn't enough. Redefining the rules of engagement. In early 2025, President Donald Trump, returning to office, signed Executive Order 14,157, officially designating major Mexican cartels, Sinaloa, CJNG, and the Gulf Cartel, as foreign terrorist organizations, FTOs. The order blurred the line between crime and war, granting U.S. forces new authority to engage cartel networks with the same intensity once reserved for ISIS and Al-Qaeda. The results were immediate. Joint operations between the Pentagon, CIA, and ICE intensified under a new umbrella mission dubbed Operation Iron Border. The strategy combined full-spectrum surveillance, precision drone strikes, and advanced cyber intelligence. By mid-2025, U.S. troop presence along the southern border had increased by 40%, transforming Texas and New Mexico into fortified zones. New AI-driven watchtowers scanned everything that moved, from vehicles to footprints in the sand. Military-grade sensors monitored seismic vibrations from potential tunnels. The border was no longer a line, it was a digital wall. The cartel counterattacked. But every action breeds reaction. The cartels, far from collapsing, adapted. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG, began deploying swarms of explosive drones, striking rival groups and government facilities alike. The Sinaloa Cartel, veterans of decades of conflict, responded with their own innovation. Vast subterranean networks running hundreds of feet beneath the border. These weren't crude tunnels. They were feats of engineering, equipped with ventilation, steel reinforcements, and electric rail systems capable of moving tons of cargo undetected. What began as a border enforcement mission quickly evolved into a high-tech intelligence war. Just a week after the Texas raid, a U.S. Coast Guard unit intercepted a semi-submersible vessel in the Gulf of Mexico carrying 3.2 tons of cocaine, valued at more than $100 million. Inside, agents discovered satellite uplinks connected to servers in Venezuela and Eastern Europe, confirming that cartel networks had gone global, integrating into transnational criminal economies. A region in turmoil. As U.S. operations expanded, violence exploded across Mexico. Cities like Culiacan, Guadalajara, and Nuevo Laredo became war zones, torn between rival factions. The Mexican National Guard reported over 15,000 cartel-related killings between January and August 2025, one of the bloodiest stretches in modern history. Under pressure from Washington, Mexico intensified cooperation. In 2025 alone, it extradited 55 senior cartel figures to the United States, many of them former soldiers and police commanders who had turned their skills toward organized crime. The extraditions disrupted supply lines and spiked street drug prices across the border by nearly 30%, according to the Department of Homeland Security. Yet even as authorities celebrated small victories, the violence and chaos exposed a painful truth. Cartels were not just criminal organizations. They were political, economic, and social structures filling the void left by weak institutions. The high cost of victory. Despite record seizures and arrests, cartel retaliation was swift and brutal. In June 2025, a U.S. ICE convoy was ambushed near Nogales, Arizona, killing 2 agents and injuring 3 others. Weeks later, a prominent journalist in Monterrey, who had exposed cartel influence in local government, was found dead. Each attack carried the same message: "You hit us, we hit back." Behind closed doors, Pentagon officials warned of a potential low-intensity conflict spreading across the border region. Satellite imagery showed cartel fighters gathering near northern Mexican states, equipped with imported weapons from Eastern Europe and the Middle East. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, estimated that Mexican cartels collectively generated over $600 billion annually, rivaling the GDP of mid-sized nations. With that kind of financial power, dismantling their networks wasn't just a matter of enforcement. It was a fight against a parallel economy embedded in global trade. The expanding battlefield. The Gulf of Mexico soon became a key front in this growing conflict. U.S. Navy vessels like the USS Zumwalt began patrolling the waters, intercepting submarines and supply boats. Within 6 months, the Navy and Coast Guard seized over $2.5 billion in narcotics, a record-breaking figure that underscored both progress and persistence of the threat. But not everyone welcomed Washington's new approach. Across Latin America, leaders voiced growing unease. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum accused the U.S. of interventionist overreach, declaring, "We welcome cooperation, not occupation. Mexico will handle its problems on Mexican soil." Her words echoed through the halls of the United Nations, where diplomats warned that the expanding military presence could spark a new kind of Cold War war, not between superpowers, but between neighboring nations entangled in crime, corruption, and survival. Divided opinions at home. Inside the United States, the public's reaction was split. A CNN poll revealed that 45% of Americans supported limited military involvement against the cartels, while 39% opposed it. The rest remained undecided, caught between outrage over the drug epidemic and fears of endless conflict. For families who had lost loved ones to addiction, every arrest and seizure represented hope, a sign that something was finally being done. But for residents along the southern border, the new reality meant heightened danger. Towns from Laredo to El Paso lived under constant tension, aware that every cartel defeat could bring retaliation. The hidden networks. Even as authorities celebrated successes, the cartel's ability to regenerate remained staggering. In September 2025, an ICE-led task force raided a safe house in San Antonio, uncovering a digital command center used to monitor U.S. drone flights and patrol schedules. Among those captured was Rafael El Lobo Herrera, a logistics commander for CJNG. His arrest exposed a massive laundering network stretching through Dubai, Hong Kong, and Panama, and led to another seizure of 15 tons of narcotics. Each breakthrough painted a clearer picture. This wasn't simply a war on drugs, it was a war over systems of power. Every dollar laundered, every shipment intercepted, was part of a global struggle for influence and control. The unending struggle today. The Texas border is a landscape transformed. Towering surveillance systems glow against the night sky. Drones hover silently, and convoys of armored vehicles patrol stretches once known only for their silence. What used to be a desert of stillness is now an arena of perpetual vigilance. And across the Rio Grande, the cartels continue to adapt, regroup, and rebuild. Somewhere in the darkness, another convoy begins to move. Another route opens. Another battle waits to unfold. Conclusion. Operation Iron Gate was more than a tactical success. It was a glimpse into the future of modern conflict, where the front lines blur between law enforcement and warfare, between nation and network. The U.S. may have struck a powerful blow, but the fight is far from over. In the end, the war on drugs is no longer just about narcotics. It's about sovereignty, stability, and survival. It's a battle for control of economies, of borders, of the very soul of two nations bound by geography and divided by destiny. As night falls once again over the Texas desert, the hum of engines returns in the distance. The dust begins to rise, and somewhere out there, beyond the glow of floodlights and the watchful eyes of drones, the next convoy rolls forward. Proof that in this war, victory is fleeting, and peace remains just beyond the horizon.